Okay, hopefully we are live. All right, let's see if this works. um, doo -doo -doo. I think if it is live, and it looks like it is, there's a little live button, so that's good. Most of you have noticed by now I do not sound like Rachel for nature journaling. This is actually Alicia today, and I was hoping that we could do something fun today also. I know Rachel does really, really wonderful journaling, but we all kind of wanted to get in on that action, so we'll have nature journaling we'll have done by different naturalists in the coming weeks. So just to get started, since I know there's a little bit of a delay between what's being broadcast and then what I'm also filming live, hopefully, yes, we can see the table. Just a quick reminder, because I always like having this reminder, especially for anyone that's just starting to watch our nature journaling videos or kind of stumbled across our Facebook or YouTube channels. You can nature journal in anything that you choose. So I always, when I got intimidated when I started doing nature journaling and different things, because I would find things like this, which is a pretty famous country diary of an Edwardian lady. And this one was done in 1906, and it's the first entry in the diary, but they always look so pretty. So there are these beautiful observations and drawings, and I was always very intimidated by the fact that you could have a book that looked like this. Now, you don't have to have something that looks quite that beautiful or polished specifically. You can get, and nowadays you can buy nature journals that look something like this that you can fill in. And those are really, really nice because they're quick, they're easy. All you have to do is just write in a date, observations, and you can make small drawings to accompany them. And there's even some that have larger places that you can put very detailed notations in. I know that sometimes it's easier to get a blank book like this. This is made for watercolor, for instance, but I don't always have my watercolors with me when I go in the field. I like to imagine I go out to nature journal with my big journal and I make all these beautiful polished observations. My hand doesn't cramp, I don't have to redo anything, but frequently I'm out in the field with something like this. That's a field notebook. This is one that my husband got for me actually, and it's got graph paper in it. So it makes it really easy to draw lines and to kind of figure out size and dimensions a little bit easier. But if I'm out and about, I'm not necessarily out with the intention of nature journaling, but if I see something, I tend to get very preoccupied and I will sit there for half an hour and observe it. I will find the one bee that's like a Halictidae on a flower and I will chase it around. And for that, usually I have a pretty standard kit of things that I always carry with me. And small pieces, small notepads like these are ones that I always do. So my nature journals end up looking more like scrapbooks. So I thought it would be fun to kind of do that today. Not necessarily taking very quick gesture drawings, such as I know Rachel did that one week with doing very quick sketches. I thought we should do something that likes to sit still. So we are going to do something in line with Climate Week. We're going to do succulents today because I have a whole bunch of plants that are succulents. Now, most of them are, for those of you that don't know what succulents are, I should probably explain that first. So succulents are they're plants with this thick, fleshy, here, let me put one a little bit closer so you can see. Actually, let me grab some leaves that I've got here. plants with this thick, fleshy leaves on them. So they have a very kind of squishable appearance is the ones that you most commonly see. So they tend to have very, very squishy, very thick, and that's because these leaves or stems, it allows them to retain water in very arid climates. So the succulent, actually that name, what it refers to is the kind of thick sap that you get in the middle. The best example would be like an aloe plant. And if you've ever smeared aloe on you to help with like sunburns and things that are skin, that's actually that sap, that's the inside of the plant. So it's that gooey kind of texture. I know she mentioned, I think with the Ohio spiderworts, you get that kind of same thing. And you get succulents across a lot of different families of plants. So the adaptation is you can get the leaves don't actually do as much photosynthesis most of the time as the stem of the plant does. That's not to say they don't do it. But they also tend to have very shallow roots and very compact growth, although most of mine are very sprawling, as you will notice. So I'm not sure if that means I'm not pruning them to be beautiful, or if they are just very happy, or if they're desperate and they're looking for water more. It's this wonderful balancing act. So succulents are you can find them in a lot of different families. In fact, they're in some of the families that you can find them in are kind of surprising. They're in the carrot family. They're in the asparagus family. There has a lot of them. Amaryllis, orchids. You can get them in those families. You can get them the spiderwort family, as I mentioned, with like the Ohio spiderwort, milkweed family. There's some really common ones that you can buy and find in stores, and most of those are going to be cactus, because all cactus are succulents, but not all succulents are cactus. And you get them typically in the asparagus family, your agave plants and your yuccas, which are native to the Americas. Those are very common. You get them frequently in like your hardware improvement stores that you find them. Ice plants, that family. I think they're also called carpetweed, and then your stonecrop family. So I'll kind of go through the ones that we're going to draw today. And also to kind of show you guys that my drawing is not that wonderful. I usually have like a short pencil like this, a really nice, I always keep it very, very sharp. And I always have a sharpener with me too. But just a very nice number 2 pencil. I like to also get ones that don't have much of an eraser. So if I'm erasing, I'm not focusing on erasing, I'm focusing more on what I'm drawing and trying to get the shape. I will erase later. So finishing the drawing is the most important part for me. Let's see. I'm going to I haven't had much coffee yet this morning, so I'm going to take some coffee here. Probably let's start with one that we are, I've got some feedback here. Let's see if we can get that fixed. There we go. Okay. So if anybody can't hear me, also let me know, please. But let's go ahead and start with, you know what, let's go ahead and start with one that's probably something similar to what you would see or find in a store. So we got this one right here, and I'm sorry to say I don't know all of them. I'm horrible at, and it can be a little confusing too, because when you find hybrid varieties, if you're buying them in stores, and it's not a store specifically for succulent plants, they may not know anything about the plants themselves. They're just selling them because they sell them. So some of the ones that you get these weird varieties, and also you can get things with a common name, like I think there's one that's like donkey horse tail. It can refer, that common name can refer to 2 completely different genuses, let alone find them in different families of succulents. And also, like a lot of things that people find pretty and are easy-ish to, well, to kill, necessarily not to take care of, they tend to like to make hybrids. So you get these weird hybrid plants that kind of follow one or the other. And we've got one I'm going to come to here in a minute that's also really fun. But let's go ahead and get started because I've been rambling for 10 minutes and I haven't drawn anything. So we'll start with this dude right here. And the one thing I really love about these, because these are, they aren't quite as thick a leaf, but you can tell they've still got a little bit of a thickness to them. They're not as plump, I would say. But if you get really close, the color is the first thing you notice. Then you notice the tips, but there's also these really fine, like hairs, celiac hairs around. They're not exactly teeth. They're much finer than that along the edges of these. So there's more and more detail the closer you look. And these are very pretty ones to draw because they have that beautiful symmetry. So there's a couple of ways you can start. You can start, I know a lot of people, when you're first starting out in like kindergarten or something and your teacher telling you how to draw a flower and they're like, here, draw center, and then you start drawing your petals like this around it. And then you start doing overlapping petals. You can do that way. You can work from the inside out, or you can work from the inside in. So if you were working from the inside in, let's go ahead and just start with, we're just going to start with this large one right up here. So you would start with the very bottom ones and kind of get those standard out. So I like to sketch very slowly where they are, and then this one's going to go up like this, so I'm going to get that outside edge because I can angle it if I wanted to angle it very narrow or if I wanted to angle it a little bit wider, but I want to get that first edge, that leading edge, the one that I'm seeing, done first. So what I'll come back in and do after, so this edge, it's going to come up like this. I'm going to do that. And perspective can really mess with how you decide to draw things too. So like this one is that, this is this one. And I do like to get, that seems like a hard line, but it also accentuates the fact that it's got, these are kind of cupped and they're flat on the one side. Oh, hello, friend. So this one, it's hard to tell when I draw that one because it's straight on, but this one you can see has got, comes down like this. Now when you're doing from the bottom up, it's a lot harder to keep everything perspective wise. So this one, because as you can tell, it's starting to look a little bit more like those glass lotus ones that you buy instead of the actual succulent in front of me. It's a little bit too sprawling. It's not pulled in quite enough. And part of that's because I'm doing these outer edges here where it has started to really, there's room and it's not quite as compact as up here. So we'll do that. And then we'll get some of these back ones in there and that should hopefully help. Part of what I want to get is also the fact that these overlap. So like this one comes in front of this one. So, and I'll make that line just a little bit darker so I remember that's how it's supposed to be. And then we'll just do that. And there's a little bit there. And part of it is also, there is a certain amount of symmetry here that I don't necessarily want to lose, but depending again on like this, how you're looking at it, the more you push the perspective, you could be looking top down, you could be looking sideways like I am, and really it's about whether you feel like you captured the important details that you want. So part of that's obviously going to be color, part of that's going to be shape. But as long as you feel like you have captured what you set out to do, that's honestly the most important point. Because that's the point of nature journaling, is to make notes about what we see, wonder why they are, appreciate their beauty, and generally speaking, just to enjoy yourself. Because if you're not having fun, then it's just work, which is not always bad because I enjoy my work. But the point is this should be something you derive a certain amount of pleasure from. All right, so coming this way, we've got one more here. So this one, I want a little bit, it's coming in down this way, and this is coming out this way, and this one actually meets a little bit closer there. There's a little bit of shading here. And this one actually comes down a little bit more into the pot than I was thinking. Now, the important detail that I want to really impress with this one, besides the dark color, is the fact that these tips have this swoop tip, this very sharp pointed tip that's pronounced. So what I'm going to do is go back in, and I'm going to put in, make sure you can tell, because all of these are very soft edges. I want to go back in and make sure that we have that tip. And right there, that actually is something that your eye normally sees right away. It's one of the first things it kind of is drawn to, and the color helps with that when you see these in stores. So it is that very sharp tip, which I'm going back over in a dark, much darker here. Now this one, because it's at an angle, and you see I'm not following my lines exactly either. I'm just doing how I would like it to look. You know, I think I missed one down in here, so I'm going to go in and do that. And this one's almost too much. So what I'll do, because the easiest thing to do with a small pad is to turn it, I'll just pull that out just a little bit. There we go. And then we'll pull this one. So this one's got a fun. And that does help a little bit too when you're putting that tip in there, because it kind of gives you a place for visually to look where your line, your center line is kind of going. So this one comes down, and then we've got one here that kind of tips right there and then comes back in there. And obviously, if you're following along, because I hope you guys are, it once again doesn't matter what type of paper you're on or what medium you're even using. So I'm just using a pencil because it's the most comfortable thing for me to use. It's what I'm used to using. But you can be going over this in pen, you can be doing it in paint. It really, really doesn't matter. So these are going to be here. So I'm going to work on getting all these tips in here on these, because that is the part that everybody kind of recognizes with this one. And as you notice, I've got a lot of lines here going. So as long as I can remember which ones I wanted to have on the outside, so like this one, I really wanted to have that be the outside of it. And then this one, I really wanted to have there. And then there's a little bit on the inside of that leaf. So you can see it kind of cups. And there's one on the inside here. And you can kind of see this one right here too is an interesting one because it's almost side on. So it's a little, it kind of actually goes almost backward a little bit. And that should give you, and then it comes down so about there, so you can, it gives it a little bit more dimension. Oh, I have a little ant friend. That's lovely. So this one, the important thing I'm going to note, because this is going to be later, I'm going to put down, I know you should probably always do this at the very beginning if you're nature journaling, but a lot of times I get very excited and I want to draw what I'm seeing right away. So this is where I very quickly will date. I will tell, like, if it's sunny, or I know it's cloudy today, for instance, although inside Alicia's house it really doesn't matter. Oh, I don't know if I even said that this was Alicia. We'll see. I have not had enough morning coffee. So we'll put down, I usually like to put down weather conditions, especially when I'm doing plants, because those observations are very important. And I don't always, I can look up the temperature later, but I will give like an approximate. If I haven't checked or anything, I'll be like, oh, I think it's around, it's enough that it's, for me, it's t-shirt weather. And that tells me a lot. If it's too warm for me to be wearing a jacket, that puts me in a pretty good ballpark what temperature it is. And then I also, most importantly, will put the date. So today is April 28th. Always put a year. Years are important. Especially if you've got lots of little pieces of paper like this. You may sort of remember what year it is, but just in case, the older you get, the more the years run together. So now the other thing, when I get back, I don't always remember the exact shade or the exact type of color. I do have a good mental picture, but it may not capture exactly what I want. So it's okay to not just put, for instance here, I'm going to put down that the tips are a certain color. So they're not just purple, they're not just red. If you want to make your own associations, that's fine. This is your nature journal. This is all for you. So for me, this is a very purple red. It's a very dark. So I'm going to put that in parentheses. It's a very, very dark color. This one, the green, is going to be a very spring green. For me, I know exactly what I mean when I say spring green. It may not be the same color that pops into your head when I say spring green. So you could be as descriptive as you want. You could say it was a paler green with lots of yellow and no hints of blue, shading into lighter, which is a very good thing. You want to add that it's shading into lighter tones as it goes inward. So then I know it's not just necessarily the way the light's hitting it or anything, which in this case it kind of is a little bit, but it's partially the way the light's let in. So what I'm seeing is the fact that it's a little bit paler on the inside of these leaves than it is towards the tip where it gets darker. And then obviously the very edges, which are red. Now it's not going to come across very well in my drawing if I do this all along the edges. It's hard, it's difficult to see, but you can do it. But it's not what you necessarily notice when you're going to be, for instance, I'm going to be coloring this in here in a little bit. So I want to mention, most importantly, I'm putting an extra arrow here and going up because I think I'm going to make a second drawing here, that there are here all along the edges that there's those hairs. And that will help with identification at a later date, because a lot of these succulents you can easily identify because of the way those leaves are. So like this one that's fallen off and has already started to sprout, and that's a whole nother thing. These guys have a very waxy appearance. They're very smooth, very waxy. There's no fine hairs. So they are a completely different family completely different genus than these guys over here. So if I make that note that all along edges there's all these fine hairs, and I've got this kind of bad drawing right here, but that's okay because it's a note for me. So I don't know what this is, and I want to identify it at a later date in this instance. So to me, this is notes about that. Now this one I'm going to put in right here. I'm going to add this guy right here because the stem is also important. So this does not have a very thick stem, it's a very thin stem, and if you notice, it's growing on the very edges of that, and it looks like there's some older leaf growth underneath. Oh, hello. I've got flies and ants. I got a whole menagerie going on here. All right. So for this one, I'm going to also make a note, but I'm going to put a very, 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 very thin stem. And it's kind of almost like a woody stem, which is interesting. It's not very fleshy, and it's not thick or juicy like the rest of these leaves. And a lot of these succulents, when they start doing that, they kind of look like that. So this is more of an adaptation for getting those roots, and some of them, if you notice, they've been water deprived. A lot of species will have tiny roots, tiny hair growing out of the sides. They're not just trying to hold on to substrate, for instance, like rocks, because this would be a great place to note whether you found it in growing in rocks, in a rocky outcrop, kind of like you get with our native seems like our hens and chicks and things like that you can find if you go hiking. But it's also to get water. Because these things, if I've neglected them too long, I do notice they will start putting out lots and lots of roots and trundles, and they're just aching for water. So anyway, we're going to put in this right here, and then I'm going to do a very, very quick sketch, because this is the one that I was a little bit more focused on. So this one's just literally going to be a very, very quick, very dirty kind of sketch, where I'm more interested in getting the fact that the position on the stem for me is more important. I've already kind of, oh, that's horrible. This is why we round it, we turn it, and we do that on the end. There we go. I'm more concerned with just trying to get the fact that we've got this growing on the very edge of the stem, and it's hanging over. Because you get different growth traits too with some of these. Things like strings of pearls, which is another succulent. It has a very distinctive way of growing, and it hangs on purpose. It grows in kind of like strings. It looks like strings of pearls. That's probably the best common name I've come across that's super descriptive besides violet. I mean, it's violet colored. So this kind of gives a good idea because I've got some weird perspective things going on, but I do want to make a note that this stem is very thin, kind of a very woody, dry appearance, and then this is just hanging off. So this is just hanging off the edge like this, and there's some, and I'm going to do it with, I'm not going to worry about color. I'm going to put that these are old and new leaves. So we've got that going on there. All right. So let's color this in. Just because coloring is the fun part. We're going to do one colored, and then I'm going to sketch a couple more. So I like, actually, you know what? I could do pencils. I'm going to pretend that I'm being very, very quick about this. Oh, lost a pencil. This is also what happens when you have years worth of colors, or you decide to raid your nephews and your old school crayons. I'm going to do crayons. I like crayons. So for me, I'm going to double check. I'm like, yeah, this is pretty close to about the shade that I want. And this is, again, this is a yellow green. So I'm just going to do, and this gets me a lot of color very quickly. And I like crayons, I know most people don't use them very often, but I like crayons because you can blend them as well as, in a lot of ways you can layer and you can blend them as well as you can colored pencils. They're not as fine, obviously, but if you really need to, you can use the edge. So if you're wanting to put in a very dark line, and then you keep your edge and you don't have to worry about that. But I just want to get in this color here. So I'm staying well away from the tips because I'm putting in a different color on top of that later. But I really want to get in this feeling that I have of this overall color, because this color is like one of my favorite colors. It's a nice, happy spring color. So we're going to put that in. And again, I'm staying on the outside. And this one is okay. It's a little bit darker because it is a little bit more shaded. So it's behind that one. Ha! And then this one, there's a little bit more shading there and there. And it's also, just like colored pencils, the amount of pressure that you're adding makes a big difference too. So I want to also make sure that I get that kind of feel that it's a little bit lighter towards the base. So I'm going to go back in here and up towards the tips. I'm going to make it just a little bit darker. And then we've got some shading up in here I want to keep. And this is a really nice, quick way to get those colors and that impression that you want. Because if this was a piece of artwork I was doing for a friend, or I was trying to put like as a Christmas card or something and give it to somebody, I'm going to take a lot more time than this. I've not been very good with time sketches or anything like that. I do take a lot of time when I'm trying to make something pretty, but when I'm just losing myself in admiring the form and the shape, and also something I want to ID later, I'm not quite as concerned with how pretty it is. I just want it to be accurate. Now this one, because I should have a crayon for that. I don't have quite the shade I want. Oh no! Okay, I got my reds. Ha! Why they were on the other side of the room, I don't know. Because past Alicia did not think future Alicia was going to need them. Shows how much past Alicia knew. So this is a very red color. It's not quite the shade I want. This purple is actually a little bit closer. So I'm going to use that. And then I also have a copper here. Now, interestingly enough, if I put that copper on top of that purple, that gets me very, very close to the color that I want. So I'm going to do that. And do that. Oh. My cat stuck his head in a whole bunch of dust, and now he is having a sneezing fit. Bless you. I don't know if anybody else can hear him. All right. There. So if I get that copper color over it. There we go. That actually looks a little bit more. And I'm making sure that I keep that tip there also. Because I want to keep that tip shape. So never knock whatever medium. Don't let anybody tell you that it's the wrong medium to use. Because once again, this is for you. These are your observations. This is the stuff you want to know about. These are the things that you enjoy and you see. So I'm not sure I can say that often enough. We're going through a very positive thing here, considering our isolation. It's always nice to know that everything you're doing is fine. So there we go. And then I'm going to fill this in a little bit more, so it doesn't look like I randomly have this white edge on the margins. There we go. A little bit darker up here. There we go. And I might even come in. There we go. That's starting to look a little bit more like what I've got. And I'm going to add in a little bit there for some shading. There we go. There. And that's all I'm going to do with that one. So I'm going to put the crayons away. And I'm going to show a few that we're going to sketch very, very quickly here. So for me, I'm going to flip the page. And I like these two because then I can tear them out. I can write this into, if I have, for instance, like mine are very large, I can write down very nicely in a nice print what I've got. And then I can kind of cut these out and put my notations in the corner if I want to later. Or it just tears off. So we're going to go with another one here. I'm going to move this one out of the way. And, you know, we've got a few here. I've got one. This one right in front of me here is a little bit hard to see. I'm going to see if I can pull it forward. It is a sprawling mess that likes to lose its leaves very, very easily and very, very readily. So it's part of the one that I was showing leaves for earlier. So that's this one. And I'm going to pull it all the way forward so you can see it's doing that on every side, every edge. So it's got one trundle here, it's got one right back here, it's got one here. So this one is one that I'm going to do a quick close-up of this, and then I'm going to get the overall form. And I'm going to make a note that the leaves are different. Now, this is actually one of the easier ways to propagate these. There's like 2 or 3 ways that you can propagate and make new baby succulents. One of them is to have the leaves, when they fall off, if you give them enough time and you give them enough water and some dirt, they start to grow new ones. So they put out roots from here. There's one I think I have that's just starting to put the roots out right here. Let's see if you can see those. And then you can see these are just starting to grow from that. So it's a new point. There's one here that hasn't even got a lot of the roots out yet. And you can tell it's just starting. Oh, that's not really in focus, right there, right on the edge. And it's not just these types. I've got ones from another one here. So this is obviously, this is a different type of succulent here, because those are a different color, they're a different shape, they've got that kind of dip in the center. So this is from a different succulent that I'll show here in a second. It's probably the one that's the most common. In fact, almost all of these succulents that I have are, I think they're all from Southern Africa. I don't have a lot that are native, which is why they're in my house. So, okay, anyway. I can't believe it's been as long as it has already. So we're going to go ahead and real quick, we'll do this close up here. So once again, I'm just going to put April 28th. The weather hasn't changed. It's still cloudy. So we're just going to do that. Now this one, we're going to start from the inside. So I'm noticing here, right in here, I'm going to put those little tiny ones first. And this one, because it's so sprawling, I think I'm going to turn it sideways, and I'm going to start here. But this one, I think I'm just going to make sure that I get the shape, and then I'm going to put this one in the corner down here. So I'm going to do this little tiny, it's very, very cute. They're just like little tiny nubs in the center here that are growing. I'm going to get those in there. I'm going to kind of plan that out. And then I've got, this is kind of almost like a beak shape. So it looks like it's eating itself. It's kind of fun. It's like seeing things in clouds. So we'll do that. It comes back around like that. And this comes back around like that. And this really kind of, even though it looks like I messed up the perspective, this gives a little bit more weight to the fact that these are very, very thick kind of fleshy leaves. So this one, I have a point here, it comes down like that, and then in, but that is the point because then it goes back to there and there. So this is actually the tip here, and it really doesn't look like it. So I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to say there, and then I'm just going to move on. I'm not going to stress it. I don't like how it looks, but I'm not going to stress it because I'm more concerned with drawing this before the storm comes in and I get rained out. So we're going to do that and that, and this one comes down. And then I'm going to make an observation about this stem. So this stem they're alternating, they're not opposite. And that's something I really want to make sure that I get noted. So this one has a much thicker stem. It's a fleshy stem. So, and it's got a little bit of, unfortunately, this is some sun damage here. So it grew a little bit too close to the window because I keep most of these in the window. But sometimes when they're reaching for the light, they get up very close to the window, closer than where I had them. I have to pull them back, and sometimes it's not fast enough. And I do have to rotate them and turn them when I take care of them. But these guys, their style is actually very much in line with myself. The one time I've never felt so horrible. My husband and I, we got a bonsai, and it was like a 5 or 7 year old bonsai, juniper, and we were trying to take care of it, and we forgot it wasn't like our succulents, and we did not water it nearly enough. So these guys, it is wonderfully preserved with a very sad in memoriam next to it on a tiny card. But anyway, I digress a little bit. These guys, the reason they do so well in semi-arid environments is because of this water retention. So they're able to store the water in these parts, and what that means is that the easiest way to kill a succulent is to overwater it. You do not want to be watering these constantly. In fact, one of the ladies that I bought some of my first jade plants from, which is going to be the next one I'm going to show you guys, she recommend the main thing is letting that soil dry out completely in between. So you want it like bone dry. You don't want it to be damp and then watering, because the roots, they don't like wet feet. When they have wet feet, that's a great way for the roots to rot. So you want it completely to dry out in between, and then you water them. So that could be anywhere from every couple weeks is usually the best I've found. And you want really well-drained soil most of the time too. Again, because you don't want their feet to stay wet. Now here I'm going to make a note that even though I can tell from my drawing, I want to make that note that these are alternating on the stem. And I do want to make a note that the stem is very fleshy. And just because I'm not going to add it in, this is just my impression. I'm not taking a photo or a snapshot. I'm going to do this. I'm going to say, if I was observing this, I would say red spots here and here, and make them very dark so I know what I was talking about. I think we'll overall, my notes go sideways, they go upside down. So I'm going to say overall very pale. Also kind of a spring green with, I would say, more yellow. And those red spots, I'm gonna say sun damage, question mark, disease. It's important to have those, because if I was looking at this and it was like, do they belong there? Is the stem supposed to have this red? Is this telling me this is a healthy plant? Does it need help? What's going on? Those are questions to have, and it's okay to have those observations. So I'm going to have an overall shape here. I'm going to put in my pot here first, and then I'm going to do just a very quick line sketch. So I'm going to, I have basically a floret here. I have like a floret here, one here. Now this stem though, this one curves back and around like this. This one, it goes over the edge and it goes around like this. And there are leaves all along the edge. This one only has like one leaf, but I do want to impart. This is a little bit more of a woody, it's got kind of like a scale on it. So this is a, it's not actually a woody stem. It's not a traditional woody stem. So I'm going to put that in parentheses, woodier stem, and I'm going to make sure it's got those lines. And then I'm going to note the pattern here. And I'll bring this forward if you want to make notes about yours, if you're following along. So this one, you can see this edge here, it's more of a papery covering is what it is. So there's that there, and that's very different than up here where the leaves are. And these are, you can see right here, it's all green. All right, so I want to make sure that I have those notations in. And I've got that there and that there. And I've got basically and I want to kind of emphasize too just a little bit how these leaves tend to have kind of a cup shape. So right now it looks like I've got some strange kind of creature from the Black Lagoon tentacled Thulu thing going on here, which is not exactly my intention. But if I wanted to go back in and make notes about this, that's when I could do it. So I like to make very detailed drawings and then overall, so this I can put down as it's a very sprawling succulent. All right, so that's this one. Now I'm going to pull in a couple of jades and talk about them, because jade plants are probably the most common ones that we see. So jade plants, I've got my favorite one here. I'm going to go ahead and pull this in. And this is something called, this is something called, I think this is finger jade. I don't think it's ogre's ear. And a lot of that just has to do with the shape right up here. Let's see if I can find one. There we go, there's one. Where it's got this kind of, they're finger-like, and they've also got this little kind of like cupped place here. So all this is this is just another variety of a jade plant, but it is a jade plant. This one is my pride and joy, mainly because I have not killed it yet, and it has grown beautifully into this lovely tree shape. But let me show you a jade plant that you probably would recognize if you saw it in the store. So usually you would have them, I've got a larger one here too. It's backed up, but this is a little jade plant. And these are really cute and they're easy to draw because they have these beautiful rounded, almost teardrop shaped leaves. And they've got these wonderful, they look like miniature trees. I mean, they're a wonderful, easy one to draw. Now I'm going to show you some other crazy ones real quick. I'm not feeling drawing that. I'd like something with a little bit different color too. And maybe not one, well, this one's got a little bit more color, but it's also very sprawling. Let me see what else we've got. Oh, got a couple here. Okay, I'll show you the short ones first. So this one, as you can tell, I've got some in here that are starting to propagate. So they're from this dude right here. And I just watered them. I'm going to leave them a little bit, loosen them up a little bit, and I'll repot them. So this guy was hanging over this one, and I just figured, what the heck? But this is a jade plant one that also fell in there. But this dude is different. He's actually very, very, see if, yeah, you can kind of tell. He's very fuzzy. This is something called bear's paw. And that's partly the leaf here. If you can see the outer margins, they've got that scalloped edge that looks kind of like a bear's paw. So it's a combination of the fact that they're very, very fuzzy and also those edges there that give them the look of kind of like claws on the tips. This is probably the best representation. And then I've got, let's see, oh, okay, we'll draw that one because that's a fun one. We've got this dude, which is also sprawling. I love the color, but it has gone absolutely bananas. So this is a grape tibia one. It tends to like things very, very sunny, and it was in the window, and as you can tell, it's curved because I kept turning it, trying to get it to, trying to not get, I didn't realize it was going to turn into a snake. So usually when you see these and they sell them in the store, all you're seeing is this very tip right here, and it's just this cute little thing, and it's sitting straight up. This thing has turned into a monster. And what you can see right in here are places where there were old leaf attachments that have broken off or died. You can see right in here. There's some older leaves too. So they do, so those are old attachments, and then, so they do grow up. These are where the newer ones obviously are growing. So they do lose them naturally. Part of that is just because they don't need them. Part of it's because I'm assuming they're closer to the water and the soil, and there's a better chance of them not being quite as dry either. So I'm going to tear these off and leave these here. And then I'm going to show, let's see, these are the two that I wanted to get to. So there's this one right here. Now this poor baby, this is something called a coral cactus. And I've had this one a very, very long time. This is not a naturally occurring succulent the way that it is. It's called a coral cactus because it looks like coral and the way it's growing. But once again, I've got some sun damage, some sunspots, and unfortunately those will never go away. So it'll continue to grow here, and it does very well since I've moved it. But those original spots, these are from probably 3 or 4 years ago. These, unfortunately, will never go away. But this is actually one succulent here, this whole top that's growing and is happy, and it's been grafted into another one. So what they did was they cut this one out, and then they cut a notch here and they put the two together. That's what grafting is. You can do it with fruit trees, you can do it with other plants. But eventually, someday, I've been extraordinarily lucky, this graft will fail. So you do have to be careful when you're buying exotics, because that's what these guys are. They're exotics. So as long as you know what you're getting into, it's not just about light and nutrients, it's also about lifespan and things like that. It's good to know kind of what you're getting into. All right, the last one, because we have a couple minutes, is this one. This one's been with me the longest. It's my oldest one, and it's probably my happiest. So I started it off with compost, and I think that's part of the reason it's done so well. It's done a very, very slow growth. But this is a zebra It's zebra something. I can't remember. Zebra something. I looked it up. I swear I looked it up. A plant, I guess? I think it's just zebra plant. And that's got to do with the white stripes. And these are really, really fun. I'm going to sketch these really, really fast because they're raised. So it's actually, these are little tiny bumps all along this. So it's a very textured plant. Now they're not always completely white. So you can see right here, this is still dark green. But these guys are also, like everything else I have, they're native to Southern Africa. But these are in the asparagus family, for instance. They're Asphodaceae, I think is the family. Yeah. So the genus is something I always want to call them Hiawatha, but they're Haworthia. I always want to call them Hiawatha. All right, so we're going to put these guys down right here, and we're going to sketch them real quick. So, oh, thank you. I like my collection of succulents. And unfortunately, sometimes I feel like it's a little bit of a Mad Max world for them because the ones that I have that are huge and wonderful are the survivors. I've tried to have split rock, I think 4 times, and I've managed to kill it every single time. So I've resigned myself to never having a split rock succulent. All right, so this is a fun one because this is all points. So even though it kind of spreads out over here, the original plant that I got looked pretty much like this when it was a baby. It was about that big and it was all clumped together like that. It wasn't quite as open. So I'm going to start with that one because that's the one that really kind of drives home how long and how pointed these are. They're almost like spines, which I don't want to call them spines because that's what you get on cactus. So, and cacti are they're their own family of succulents. And those spines are a very unique adaptation. I could probably do a whole thing on just cactus alone, and that would be very, very weird. And very, very fun, and very, very painful. Because I love cactus, but I don't think I've ever been able to not injure myself with them. But the pain is worth it. Oh, the pain is worth it. And especially when cactus bloom. Because when cactus bloom, they need pollinators. They don't self-pollinate. They can sometimes accidentally pollinate themselves, but it's very, very rare. That's like the exception, not the rule. So when they need pollinators. I think bats pollinate like 1/4 of all cactus, but carpenter bees actually are usually, no, not carpenter bees, but bees, yes. I'm thinking amaryllis for some reason. That's weird. So we're going to put in, so once again, note, April 28th. And now it's partly cloudy. So we're going to put partly cloudy. Ha! But these are very long. They're thinner. They're still fleshy because it's a succulent. Thinner. We're going to say spikier. I'm not even sure I spelled that right. Oh well, spikier. With very clear defined tips. So that's going to be my notes for that. And then I'm going to take out one of these and I'm going to try and draw it very, very close up. So I'm going to do something like that. And then I want to note that there's these like little raised white bumps. And part of what I'm doing, instead of just doing a line straight across like that, because sometimes they do grow almost in a line like that, or even just doing like that, it gives you a different texture. So this looks almost scaled or tile-like. This is very, very straight. When you curve the edge of these over, though, it gives the instant impression that you're looking at something that's meant to be three-dimensional on it. So those rounded edges automatically impart that. So even if you follow, for instance, really, really close up here, let me pull it. Very, very close up, some of these that have that kind of edge and that slope and that scallop to them. If you do that and you round it out over the edge, that gives it that look that it is where it's curling around. It's actually on top of it, it's textured. So, I'm going to say textured. I'm going to mention, oh, that was horrible. The whole thing is very dark green. And they're white. So I've got a little bit of time here. I'm going to go ahead and do it since I know I'm running over, but I'm going to go ahead and play with some colors really, really quick. So this is, it looks like a dark green. That's an aquamarine. That's not the one I want. That's a teal. This, there, that's closer to what I want. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat. You can do the same thing with pencils or crayon. And I want to put that white in very quick, because what that should theoretically let me do, it means that if I color that in white, I can put the green on top of it and it's not going to show. So we'll try it. I haven't tried mixing a pencil and a crayon recently, but yeah, that works pretty well. So we'll do that. And then you get the same thing over here. So you'll get those stripes. So this is the quickest and easiest kind of down and dirty way to do that. And that should, yeah. So especially I like mixing mediums. And so what that does is that leaves those little tiny white spots that I want, but then I can very quickly color the whole thing and shade it in that color and get that dark green that I want. So sometimes if you know what you're going to be doing ahead of time, you only need a few things. Sometimes you can come back in if you want to make notes first and later. But that's pretty much all that I was going to do today. That's all I had. Now this one I'm actually going to write down because I know what it is. So I'm going to add in real quick before I leave that this is a zebra plant succulent. And I'm going to put in the family because I know the family. So the family is Asphodelaceae. And then the name, which is the genus, Haworthia, and the species. All right, and there you have it. This, and then I'm going to pull it out because it's going to go in my scrapbook with my other ones. And this is how Alicia journals. Very messily, but with great satisfaction and lots of things to look up. So, once again, thank you guys so much for joining me while we nature journal. And if you're looking forward to somebody else's style and new and different content, please go ahead and stay tuned for this Thursday because Lindsay is going to be doing mushrooms. So that should be a lot of fun. And I highly recommend planting these if you decide to plant succulents and anything that you want to, as long as you keep the shape mindful of their needs. So old aquariums are great. I saw that, Sarah. That's a really, really cool idea. I'm partial to lots of old pottery, so that's kind of my thing, and enamelware. All right. Well, thanks, guys. I hope you guys have fun and enjoy journaling today, or be it tomorrow, and stay tuned for Thursday.